Hello and welcome to the Inappropriate Harry Potter podcast. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Dona Marie.
And today we're looking at Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Chapter 1, which is called The Riddle House. Imagine some really cool Harry Potter themed music here. Dona Marie, over to you.
You did so well, and it only took 3 takes there.
That was awesome, mate. That was awesome. And it only took about 22 beers, so I'm only a little bit drunk.
Totally worth it.
It was worth it. So this chapter's called The Riddle House. That's right, yeah?
It is, yeah.
Oh, you made me wait for it there, a bit of tension.
I think we're just on a slight delay. I don't think I'm not holding out.
Oh, okay. You really made me work for it then. So I'm not gonna lie to you. I think I've probably read this book like 1,000 times, and I think I've always skipped the first chapter. I just always found it really boring.
Oh, because when we spoke about it a moment ago, I said this is quite a nice start, and you said yeah.
I was people pleasing.
I quite like the start of this because, like we were just kind of chatting about, it always starts with poor Hedwig trying to get out of her cage, and it's nice to get rid of that and just have a little bit of time travel.
Yeah, and it is true that I think we were talking about before how every single book kind of sets the scene for Harry living his horrible little life. You know, he's a wizard, blah, blah, blah. Like it is a change of pace now, isn't it?
Yeah, start with Voldemort. Because what we actually walk into is people talking about the Riddle House, isn't it? And they still gossip about it, even though it was like 50 plus years ago, that there was this murder event, should we call it that, where 3 people were killed at the same time. And that was the 3 riddles. And it starts telling us about the maid found 3 riddles dead, and that's Voldemort's father and paternal grandparents.
Oh, yeah.
So it takes us into the pub, which has got some kind of classic pub name that I can't remember, but it's talking about, can you?
Yes, well, I cheated and I wrote it down. The Hanged Man.
Yeah, nice. So it starts macabre, which is classic. And they're talking about how this gardener, Frank Bryce, was the gardener of the riddles, and he was the suspect for the murder.
Yeah, poor Frank. And everyone's all like, oh, now that I think about it, he did kind of seem like a mass murderer because I offered him a cup of tea once and he said no.
Well, I've got a little bit of a theory about that, but he said that he's a veteran and he's not well liked. He's being bullied by the local teenagers and he's deaf. So he has got quite a few issues going on.
Yeah, he needs some sort of like social care assessment, get a chairlift put into the house. He's probably just really angry and resentful. Like he fought for his country, comes back, no one cares.
Well, is he just angry and resentful, or is there another cause potentially for his irritability?
Maybe he was having an affair with one of the riddles that got murdered.
Maybe Voldemort's dad, because he was the youngest. And that would marry up best.
Yeah, and I don't think homosexuality was looked upon kindly in those days. So
in the 1940s.
No, in my mind, they were just like really anti that.
Yeah, casually frowned upon. But I've got another reason that I think could be the cause for his irritability. Have I provoked any kind of curiosity yet? Is your curiosity piqued?
Does he have IBS? Because that would make me irritable.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I see the logic there. But
yeah.
So Tom Riddle is Voldemort, Tom Riddle Jr., and he's the culprit, isn't he? He's the person that's committed these murders. Where was Voldemort's first Horcrux? Where did he plant that?
I really wish you wouldn't do this to me, Donna, because you kind of put me on the spot. You make me feel really insecure. Now everyone's listening, they're going to be like, "Yeah, Nat, you should know this." I don't know. I have a really. Oh, hang on. No, I don't know. Oh, I know. It was in the Gryffindor hat. Nope, that was a sword. And it wasn't a Gryffindor hat, it was a sorting hat.
Which did sort 25% of people into Gryffindor. So, I mean, there's some accuracy there. Well, he had the first, I think it's the first, but I'm pretty sure the first Horcrux was the Gaunt, which is his mother's maiden name, the Gaunt family ring. And he hid that in the middle home.
It so just clicked.
It didn't click, I told you. So we know later on that the Horcruxes, they can cause people to become volatile, irritable, start to bring out their darker side. So I was wondering if that had happened to poor old Frank.
Yes, that makes total sense. And also in the chapter it says that, you know, Frank stays in the house, you know, his whole life, and families come and go and they don't stay, and they think it's because of his energy, but actually it could be his energy, but also the Horcrux's energy that explains why people don't stay.
Yeah, absolutely, because people don't like the vibe of the place, do they?
No. Well, that's really clever. Well, now, was that you or was that Sam, who we know is really good at this? Sam's your cousin who gives you all the good bits of wisdom.
Well, do you know what? Potentially Sam could have had the same theory, but as you gave me like 32 seconds warning before this podcast, I didn't have the opportunity to check in with my oracle.
Yeah, I need to hook up with him because he needs to make me sound better than what I do. So that needs to happen. I did want to show off a little. Do we have any? Are you a fan of tarot cards, tarot reading by any chance?
When you say fan, what does that mean to you?
To me, that means that you just answer the question. No, like, do you know like what the symbols and the tarot cards mean? And have you ever had like tarot reading before? It is related to the book, I promise.
I have had tarot reading before, and I really do like the thought of it. So I always want to have a go. But every time I go to a tarot reader, they tell me something horrible, and they presume heterosexuality in me, which is a little askew. So the accuracy has been a little low for my liking, but I'd like to believe in it. So to make me. I'm waiting.
It would be cool, wouldn't it, if it was real? I really want to prove that it's got a bit of a connection here, because the name of the pub is the Hanged Man. And have you ever had a tarot card come up with the Hanged Man on it?
I think I recall. Yeah, I know which card you mean, I think.
That's cool, because it rang a bell with me, and apparently it's the 12th trump card in a major arcana tarot deck, which means nothing to me. But apparently when it is faced upright, it means the breaking of old patterns and metamorphosis, which I thought was potentially foreshadowing something happening like in this chapter, because, you know, Voldemort is going to metamorphosis into a human, like a proper human, maybe.
Interesting.
And apparently it can also mean ultimatum, surrender, sacrifice, wisdom, and prophecy.
Well, there we are. There must be a definite link. Is that yours, or did you call Sam?
I called google.com. My very good friend Google. But then it made me want to do a bit of, like, do a tarot reading, you know? It just looks like fun. I like the pictures, so.
It does look like fun. I mean, maybe some people are really, really good at it, and maybe it's a thing. I just haven't managed to stumble across those people.
We need to find a Professor Trelawney, don't we?
I would love to see Professor Trelawney.
Yeah.
I'd like to see what kind of thing she shrilly screamed at me.
Oh, yeah, that'd be hilarious. I reckon it'd be like 40% accurate, but I would go with it. But I did wonder if, I was like, oh, I wonder if the pub was named the Hanged Man with reference to tarot cards, because it just felt like the meaning was a little bit quite relevant to the theme of the chapter, maybe.
I don't know what led you down that path, but I like it.
Thank you. I was really drunk. No, I was only a little bit drunk.
So many butterbeers.
I wish. I do love butterbeer, actually.
So what happens after this point? Oh no, you do it.
No, I was going to ask you to do
So we've introduced this gardener, and as you've rightly outlined, he still lives on the premises. He still lives in the cottage in the garden, and he still gardens. Is that how you say? Well, I don't know. So he's still a functional gardener, shall we say? And he protects the property, and that's what you were referring to earlier. So he'll see children trying to break in, and he will go and get them out. So he wakes up in the middle of the night and he sees a light flickering, and he thinks the children broken in again and potentially they've set a fire. So he slips into the building as quietly as he can, and he hears Voldemort and Wormtail whispering by the fire. Is that what you remember?
Yeah.
So they're speaking in hushed tones, aren't they?
Mm.
I thought he was deaf.
You mentioned that Frank was deaf earlier, and I don't remember that, but my memory is shocking. So is Frank deaf?
He's deaf, yeah. That's why I mentioned it earlier, because I needed to draw it back to my point, because it really stood out to me that they said he was deaf for some reason. And then this whole chapter is that they are whispering to each other or speaking Parseltongue, and he hears all of it, and they make a big deal out of him like putting his finger in his ear to try and loosen some wax because he thinks he's mistaking what they're saying because they're using magical terms. And I thought, how's he hearing them?
Do you know what though? Maybe they weren't speaking in hushed tones. Maybe they were just talking normally or even shouting because they're talking about quite a passionate subject. But to Frank, it sounds like they're hushed.
Yeah, potentially.
But why? Why is that important? Like, why did they?
Why
right.
mention
So
he's deaf in the beginning, only for us to contradict it later? Just like proofread your chapter.
Interesting. Yeah, like what purpose? And actually him being deaf actually means that he's not helpful because through him we can't hear anything if he's deaf.
Exactly.
Unless he's really good at lip reading and she just sort of didn't.
Well, no, because he's outside the room at this point, isn't he? He can't see them, because Voldemort is revealed to him later. But then I did think, isn't Voldemort able to kind of get into people's minds and they can hear his voice even if he's not close? So maybe that kind of power has seeped into poor old Frank.
God, poor Frank, honestly. What a horrible life he's had. And then, yeah, well, that's an interesting point. I didn't pick up on that. And then he hears that conversation, doesn't he? And in the conversation between Voldemort and Wormtail, they're talking about their plan and blah, 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 everything that they've been doing. And I kind of got a bit of an insecure vibe of Lord Voldemort. Because they're talking about, because Wormtail is all like, they're talking about their plans. Harry Potter's involved in it somehow, and Wormtail's like, look, why can't we just use anyone else? Like, why are we going to this elaborate plan of trying to get hold of Harry Potter? And it's all a little bit ominous. And I'm like, I'm with Lord Voldemort, Wormtail. I'm like, go for the easy option. You're making life very difficult for yourself. And Wormtail's like, let me go into town. I'll get a nice muggle or wizard or whatever, and I'll bring them back to you. And Lord Voldemort is like, oh, perhaps your task of nursing me has become wearisome. Maybe you're trying to get away from me. And I was like, oh,
needy.
Being a bit insecure. Yes, a little bit. Like, be cool, Lord Voldemort.
Do you not think that this was JK's way of trying to illustrate what she'd mentioned previously in book 3, where Dumbledore was saying, Wormtail's going to be indebted to you because you saved his life to Harry Potter. So he's now shown some reluctance to hurt Harry Potter because Harry Potter saved his life.
Yeah, that did flicker in the back of my mind when I was reading this.
But you preferred the idea of Voldemort being insecure and a bit needy.
Yes, I did. I did indeed. And then that got me thinking. I was like, wow, Lord Voldemort, you're really dependent on Wormtail. Maybe your confidence is at an all-time low. You're doubting your own abilities. Wormtail's looking after you. But how did Lord Voldemort survive before Wormtail went back to him? That's what I was thinking.
I don't know, because all I'm kind of running through my mind is Voldemort sat on a chair going, "Babe, don't you love me anymore?" I don't know how he survived. Was he just hanging off Nagini's teat at that point?
That is an image that we do need to come back to, because I've got a couple of questions about how you would milk a snake. And you just used the word teat, which has got a bit of vom in my mouth. But I Googled this, and apparently, I think Lord Voldemort would have been like possessing small animals and stuff, but he didn't like to do that because it reduced their lifespan and he couldn't do like a lot of magic. And I think then with Wormtail's support, they managed to get him into like a sort of body-ish thing for the start of this chapter, in this chapter. But
so where did they get this body from? Where's the body from?
Oh, I think later on, doesn't Lord Voldemort say that he uses like the unicorn blood, some spells, and the venom from the snake to create like a makeshift body that's just about strong enough for him to stay in?
Doesn't sound like the recipe for a body, but I'm just a muggle.
I was today years old when I realized that muggle is like mug as in you mug, as in you numpty. I don't know if me and Chris had this conversation before.
Is that like legit back from the 90s though, when she was writing this?
I don't know. I need to do a bit of research, don't I?
Were people going, "Oh, you mug," back in the 90s, or is that more of a 2000s thing?
Oh, I don't know now. Oh, you mug.
Maybe. It does sound like it probably has about 30 years in it.
Yeah, it could do. We'll have to research it later. So, did you want to elaborate any more on the whole teats thing that you mentioned earlier? Or are we just going to let that fly? Like, what's the deal with that?
Well, teats was quite misleading. This comes back to them discussing, because one of the reasons that Wormtail says we can't take Harry Potter is because it's going to alert everybody to another disappearance, because they're talking about Bertha Jonkins. I can't remember what they said, but they've disappeared this woman, haven't they? And that's because they've extracted her knowledge from her, and then they've made her so weak that they got Nagini to feed off her and become the Horcrux. So after this point, it sounds like they are, when they say milking a snake, I'm pretty sure that's the venom from some kind of glands in their mouth rather than nipples.
Yeah, it's a shame because I kind of had this image of a snake with these massive tits.
And Voldemort is drinking from it.
Yeah, and loving life, just really, really happy, like in his real happy place. And Bellatrix just being really jealous.
I hope that is actually how it played out and that I'm wrong. But he's drinking the venom at this point for sustenance. That's his food. That's the only thing he's surviving off. And is that because Nagini is a Horcrux that's offering him sustenance?
I don't know, because I Googled this. I was like, how do you even milk a snake? And it looks hard for anyone out there who's interested. It doesn't look easy. But apparently you've got to express their teeth against a flat surface, and then you've got to massage their venom glands. I thought that sounded quite inappropriate. And then you collect the venom. And then I was like, but what is in the venom? Because normally that would kill somebody. So you're right. Is it because it's like venom from the Horcrux within the snake?
I don't know if it's like pure Voldemort essence. Potentially, who knows? But that's how he's surviving currently. But I can't work out how killing Bentha or Bertha, I really should be able to read my own handwriting. I'm not sure how killing her and then the genie eating her created a Horcrux anyway.
I didn't think it did.
That's what it says on Google.
Yeah, but what does Sam say? I trust Sam more than I trust Google. Okay, no, you're right. So that's interesting. So I thought the Horcrux within Nagini was created only because Nagini ate that witch?
That was the moment it happened. I don't know how. I don't know what the catalyst was for her becoming, the snake becoming a Horcrux. I really don't understand the procedure, but apparently it was that event that led to Nagini becoming a Horcrux.
Actually, you know what? That does make sense, because do you remember when they were talking about how you make a Horcrux? Is that you got to kill somebody.
And then
Yeah, and then the Horcrux is made. So that's why when Harry's mum dies, part of Voldemort's soul goes into him, creating a Horcrux within Harry.
okay,
Can that
and
be
that's
it?
because his soul's splintered now, isn't it? That's really easy to
Yeah,
splinter, so maybe it's something to do with that. Okay, I'll give you
that's
that.
interesting. I just assumed that Nagini was a Horcrux from like before Voldemort lost all his power. I thought Voldemort put his made a Horcrux with Nagini kind of ages ago before. So that's really good that you raised that. Thank you. I learned something today.
Well, so did I, because you forced me to listen to this book very, very recently. So I didn't know either. So at this point, they've spoken about Bertha, and Wormtail's becoming quite jealous because Voldemort's suggesting to him that he is not really there because of good intentions or bad intentions. He's actually there because he can't be anywhere else. And he starts talking about getting in one of his other loyal servants, which Wormtail's like, I'm loyal. And he's like, well, I'll reward you later for this whole Bertha nonsense. And I'll reward you with something that other Death Eaters would give their right hand for. That's a bit mean, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because he
So
does
what's
take
your
his right
friend's?
hand later, doesn't he?
Oh, oh, he bad. He's really, really clever. So he already knows what he's going to do to Wormtail. So he's actually going to give him something that he just took away from Wormtail.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's foreshadowing making Wormtail slice his own hand off.
He's evil. I still don't get why Wormtail went back to him to begin with. Like, doesn't Wormtail realize that him going back to Lord Voldemort makes Lord Voldemort more powerful? So if he hadn't have gone back to Lord Voldemort, then he would have nothing to fear, right? Because Lord Voldemort would never have gotten any stronger.
I think Voldemort's his only form of protection at this point, because the whole wizarding world thinks he's dead. And if he's not dead, that means that Sirius didn't kill him, which means that Sirius likely didn't kill the Potters or lead Voldemort to kill the Potters. So it would undo this story that has been kind of weaved together since his death. So he wouldn't have any protection. He'd have nowhere to go. So his only choice really is to go to Voldemort.
He did not think that through when
Didn't
he
think it through.
no, and I feel like maybe if he had learnt to play chess, he would have been a bit more strategical. Because he is screwed, really. Do you feel sorry for him at this point?
Um, I'm feeling more sorry for Frank at this point.
Poor Frank. That is not a good way to die.
But Wormtail does show some empathy, because what I wanted to know as well. So Nagini comes through and she sees Frank in the hallway, and then she goes in and hisses at Voldemort. Frank's in the hallway, and Wormtail pops out to go and get him under Voldemort's command, and he looks quite reluctant, whereas Voldemort's clearly a psychopath.
Mm.
But and they've shown that the way through, haven't they? Because like he's gone to kill his own family in this house, and this is the house of his family that he's murdered, and he showed no remorse about killing his family, which I thought was weird. I thought, if you're going to turn up to your dad's house, who abandoned your mum when he found out she was a witch, which led to you being an orphan, I would want to first come into this house and ask a few questions. But he just killed them all, and then he lures Frank into this room as well, and he also doesn't ask him any questions about his family. So he's got no curiosity about his own heritage.
No, he really doesn't. He doesn't care, does he? What kind of questions would you have asked if you were a young Voldemort going into the house where your last remaining relatives were living?
What would I have asked to the family itself?
Yeah, like if you had been like young Voldemort.
I'd have wanted to know if there was a family vault before I
Mhm.
killed them. I thought this was like Voldemort almost was sticking up for single mothers. He's like, hey, don't you shouldn't have left my mum. Not cool.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to pop a
Kill
killing
you.
curse on you. But then as I do, I got
Oh,
into another rabbit hole. So I was thinking, he's clearly a psychopath. He has no empathy. Um, he's quite grandiose. He's everything is for himself, isn't it? All of his interests are motivated by what he needs. So he sounds like he's a psychopath, which means that he has an impairment in his frontal lobe. So wouldn't Reparo fix it? What are your thoughts?
um, I think you're spot on. I think you should definitely email J.K. Rowling and tell her that. I don't think anyone's ever thought of that before, you know. I didn't know that about the frontal lobe either. Did you Google that or did you already know that?
I already knew that, but
Mm.
I was thinking about it today, and I was thinking Reparo fixes things, doesn't it? So that should be quite a simple procedure. But do you think it's because the magical world have such limited mental health knowledge that they don't realize it's an impairment in the frontal lobe, so therefore they don't realize that Reparo, that simple, lovely spell, could have averted all these problems?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? But then I often think, well, do you think some spells are like, oh yeah, it's helpful for repairing things, but not A, B, C, D, E, F, G? Like when I was like, oh, Accio Rat, if you want to find scabbers in the
Yeah.
dark. And Chrissy was like, oh yeah, but maybe you can't use it with living creatures. And maybe it's the same with a Reparo, like you can't use it for like psychological or internal issues.
Maybe, but there's only one way to find out, really.
I mean, that is a level one. That is an intermediate. That is a year one at Hogwarts kind of spell. Think of how many people could have been saved if someone just reparoed Lord Voldemort.
Exactly. And I mean, I know that it would have been very boring because the book would have ended now, that Scabbers just
Mm.
goes, oh, do you know what I reckon? I reckon I can sort you out, actually. And then it'd have all just
Yeah,
settled down.
I think they missed a treat there. They really did. But I think we've all learned something today. We've learned two things today: how to make a Horcrux, and
we,
the second thing about
we definitely haven't
yeah,
learned how to make a Horcrux. We still haven't got any
no.
clue.
Let's just put that on the back burner at the moment. Okay, let's not try and make any more Horcruxes until we figure out what we're doing wrong.
Yeah,
Because
fair. That's absolutely fair. I'll hold off. That seems more like a New Year kind of thing, anyway.
yeah, we just trying to do too much too soon.
So Frank's been they've identified that Frank's in the hallway and he's getting called in. He's been summoned by Lord Voldemort and he starts getting quite brave, doesn't he? And he tries to challenge him. But
Mm.
did anything bother you about Frank entering the room?
You probably picked up on something, didn't you? Like he's not using a walking stick or
No, 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 just some language that I wasn't that keen on. Was there anything that you saw?
Oh
Chrissy
no, I
definitely would have.
didn't. Oh, don't you dare.
She would
Right.
have.
The sister rivalry is coming out. You playing me good. You know how to hit my buttons. Oh
and
no, I feel like a failure right now. You're triggering me.
and you know why Chrissy would have noticed it? You do.
Animal rights?
Absolutely. Not even animal rights this time, but just plain mean. So he comments that there's a snake laid on the rug, just like some horrible travesty of a pet dog. I mean, Jesus. It's just a snake, man.
Yeah, but then it's like, oh, the snake does probably eat him.
It
But
does, but
maybe the
think
snake eats him because he made that comment.
I reckon so. I reckon so because Nagini's already seen him and gone past. Right? She wasn't bothered, and then he thinks of her as a horrible travesty of a pet dog, and she's like, do you know what? Maybe I am hungry.
Yeah, I bet she's like, you know what? Actually, I'm not hungry. I actually feel really sick, so just eating like an old lady. But you know what? I'm going to make room for this old guy. Now who's the travesty?
Too old to make a
Isn't
meal.
that funny? Maybe I agreed with him, and that's why it didn't bother me. I was like, yep, it is a travesty. So there you go. My own prejudice there made me blind to some information.
Do you know who wouldn't have thought that?
Chrissy and Hermione.
And Hermione, yeah, absolutely. She doesn't care about scabbers, but other animals. So yeah, I'm getting the sense that JK is not an animal lover, but that brings us to the end of the chapter. Do you want to say how the chapter ended?
Frank dies. Spoiler alert, guys. Frank is not a key character in this book, so do not get attached. And if you did get attached, we are going to signpost you to some really good therapists.
We'd all built some affection for Frank.
And I think the bit that made me feel really sad is when he's like, oh, I'm going to tell my wife. My wife knows I'm up here. And I'm like, oh, Frank, you ain't got a wife. And everybody knows it. You got nothing. And I was like, yeah, that is like, I felt sorry for him then. Did you?
Yeah, because he's got Voldemort that pretty much looks like raw dough in a hood at the moment, laughing at him, saying, you haven't got a wife. And I'd be like, look at the state of you. And you're taking the piss out of me over my single status. You're a mess.
True. That is true. And I liked Frank's bravery. He was like, oh, Lord, is it? Well, I don't think much of your manners, my lord. Turn around and face me. And I was like, oh, hello. I like fiery
Spicy.
Frank. Spicy. You got a little bit of fight in you. I like that. And then it was like Voldemort turns around and he's like pissing his pants because he's so scared. And I was like, yeah.
I wonder if Voldemort purposely made him spicy before he killed him for an extra bit of flavour for old Nagini.
Oh, yeah. I bet he did. Yeah, I bet he did.
Go on, flood yourself with cortisol, make yourself delicious.
Well, I was really excited about this chapter in it for one reason only, and that was because I was like, you know what? I'm finally going to give Nagini the time she deserves. I'm going to Google what her name means. Do you have any idea what her name means?
I don't.
Don't get excited. It literally is too. Oh no. It's literally in Sanskrit, it means female snake. So I feel a little bit like Nagini got screwed over in the old name department, not gonna lie.
I don't feel like there's much I can give you back over that little bit of intel.
Was it disappointing or?
Oh, kind of flat. Yeah, I thought it would be something exotic or, something which means that she's kind of his spirit animal, or maybe they're kindred spirits, something spirity, apparently. But no.
Yeah, like Lone Walker or something cooler than that and less lame.
I am never letting you name a snake.
Please let me just name one. Let it get me, I'll get it out of my system. This is why I have no pets.
And this is my pet snake, Lone Walker, Natalie's fault.
Well, just one thing, and again, a massive spoiler alert, guys, but when I was Googling Nagini, or female snake, as she's otherwise called, apparently she kills Snape, Professor Snape, and I didn't realise that. I thought Lord Voldemort killed Professor Snape.
He's up on the one of the turrets, isn't he, when he gets killed? Voldemort's definitely there.
Yeah, because in the film, I swear, like he gets like slashed in the throat. And I know this because I recently watched a YouTube video about, Professor Snape and Harry Potter's best moments together, like you do. And I was like, oh, he's been sliced in the neck. So he wasn't attacked by a snake.
That's quite a visceral death, isn't it? And when somebody, when Voldemort normally kills somebody, it's quite quick. But Snape was, he was a double agent, so he probably felt very, very betrayed by him. So I can understand why he'd want to go for a bit more of a gory death. And Nagini can function in that way.
But did he know that Professor Snape was a double agent at that time? Because doesn't he say something like, "Oh, it's a shame that I have to kill you because you've been so loyal"?
I've never read the books.
Oh,
Of course I have. How do you think I'm here?
honestly, I don't know.
I literally
We just found you on the street.
just because Chrissy's so busy all the time, you're like, oh. I have a colleague who likes talking, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall it for some reason, but I just remember it being sad. And let's not spoil it for anybody else who potentially hasn't read the books and is just following the podcast.
Oh no, maybe I'll delete that later, that last comment.
So I'm pretty sure that wraps us up.
Yeah, short and sweet.
I don't know if it was that short. It's not 1 hour and 2 minutes long. Sorry about that, everybody. But it's quite a succinct chapter, isn't it? It's essentially a bit of a flashback and then a little bit of trying to illustrate that Harry's tapped into whatever Voldemort's doing, because when Frank is killed, Harry wakes, and then that's the last sentence. So I think it's trying to illustrate that connectiveness that they have.
Yeah, that's a good point, and we find out a bit more about that later, don't we?
We do indeed. So that's where it ends.
Well, a good start to book 4. Very good start. Already it's a lot darker, isn't it, than how the other one started off at?
Yeah, I like that. I think this is when the books get really good.
Yeah, same. I'm excited. Well, thank you, Donna Marie, for your input and your intellectual comments.
Thank you for inviting me when Chrissy is busy.
That's okay. You're my favorite backup. You're my third option. And yes, well, thank you for listening, everyone. We are on Facebook, and yeah, so leave a comment or like our podcast or subscribe, and tune in next Friday for chapter 2 review. Mischief managed.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.